The little girl stood alone beneath an arch of dying white roses while 200 wedding guests pretended not to see her. Her satin shoes were soaked through. Rainwater had darkened the hem of her pale blue dress, and the tiny basket hanging from her wrist contained only 3 crushed petals. Somewhere beyond the glass doors of St. Aurelia's Grand Hall, musicians were still playing the final notes of a wedding march that had ended nearly an hour ago. The bride and groom had left. The guests were leaving. Even the cleaners had begun removing the decorations. But 9-year-old Eloan Hart was still waiting for her stepmother to come back. She said 5 minutes, Eloan whispered to herself. She had been repeating those words for so long that they no longer sounded true. 5 minutes. That was what Celeste had said when she led Eloan out through the side doors after the ceremony. Wait beneath the rose arch. Do not move. Do not embarrass me today. I'll return in 5 minutes. Then Celeste had climbed into a silver limousine with Eloan's father's younger brother, and the car had disappeared into the rain. Eloan had not understood why her stepmother was leaving without the groom. She had not understood why Uncle Lionel was sitting beside her, and she had not understood why Celeste had taken both suitcases from the hotel room that morning. Now, as the last cars pulled away from the grand circular driveway, understanding arrived slowly and cruelly. Celeste was not coming back. Before we discover why one frightened flower girl was left behind at a wedding, and why 4 of the most feared men in Belladonna City would soon turn the entire underworld upside down for her, subscribe to the channel and stay with this story until the end. Because the woman who abandoned Eloan believed she was leaving behind a helpless child. She had no idea whose child Eloan really was. A member of the cleaning staff pushed a trolley through the glass doors. He paused when he saw her. "You're still here." Eloan nodded. "Where are your parents?" "My stepmother is coming back." The cleaner looked toward the empty driveway. His expression changed. It was the same expression adults had worn around Eloan since her father died 3 months earlier. Pity mixed with uncertainty, as if sadness were an illness they might catch by standing too close. "What about the wedding couple?" "I don't know them." The cleaner frowned. "You were their flower girl. Mrs. Vale paid Celeste to let me do it." That was the truth. Celeste had accepted an envelope of cash from the bride's mother because another flower girl had fallen sick. Eloan had been dressed, instructed to smile, and sent down the aisle scattering petals for strangers. She had done everything perfectly. She had not complained when the shoes pinched her toes. She had not cried when Celeste yanked the brush through her tangled hair. She had not asked why there was no seat reserved for her at the reception. And still, she had been left behind. The cleaner crouched in front of her. "Do you know your address?" Eloan recited it. He exchanged a look with the woman folding tablecloths inside the hall. "I'll call someone." "No police," Eloan said quickly. The cleaner blinked. "Why not?" Celeste had warned her about the police. If Eloan caused trouble, she would be sent somewhere cold where nobody would care whether she ate or slept. She would never see her home again. She would lose the blue music box that had belonged to her mother and the notebooks where her father had drawn strange maps. "I'm not trouble," Eloan said. "I can wait quietly." The cleaner looked even sadder. Before he could answer, the sound of engines rolled across the driveway. Not one engine. 4. Every worker near the entrance stopped what they were doing. 4 black vehicles entered through the iron gates in perfect formation. They were not decorated for a wedding. They carried no ribbons, flowers, or cheerful guests. They moved with the slow, controlled precision of vehicles that were never stopped by traffic lights, police checkpoints, or ordinary rules. The first was a long, armored sedan. The second was a dark luxury SUV. The third was an old-fashioned limousine with windows like polished obsidian. The fourth was a low, powerful car that looked built for speed. All 4 stopped before the steps. The cleaner rose immediately. "Go inside," he told Eloan, but Eloan remained beneath the rose arch. The doors of the vehicles opened. Men in dark coats stepped out first. They scanned the building, the roofline, the windows, and every person standing nearby. Then 4 other men emerged. Eloan did not know their names. Every adult in Belladonna City did. The first was Cassian Vare, head of the Vare Consortium. He was tall and sharply dressed, with a charcoal overcoat buttoned to his throat and a face that revealed nothing. Newspapers called him an investor. Detectives called him untouchable. Men who worked for him simply called him Sir. The second was Bastian Rourke, ruler of the Southern Docks. He was broader than Cassian, with a scar crossing one eyebrow and hands that looked capable of bending iron. He had once ended a port strike by walking alone into a warehouse filled with armed smugglers. Nobody knew what he had said inside. They only knew the strike ended before sunrise. The third was Lucien Marrow, the quiet architect of half the city's political secrets. Silver threaded his dark hair despite his relative youth, and he carried a polished black cane because of an old injury nobody dared mention. Lucien rarely raised his voice. He did not need to. The fourth was Dario Sable, the youngest and most unpredictable of them. He wore no tie, only a black shirt beneath his coat, and his restless gaze missed nothing. Where Cassian calculated, Bastian confronted, and Lucien manipulated, Dario moved like a spark searching for fuel. The four men did not usually travel together. They controlled separate territories. They had different allies, different enemies, and enough history between them to fill a graveyard. Yet they climbed the steps side by side. The cleaner's face drained of color. One of the wedding coordinators hurried from a hall. "Gentlemen, the reception has ended. We are aware," Cassian said. His voice was calm, but the coordinator immediately stepped aside. Lucien studied the discarded flowers, empty chairs, and half-dismantled decorations. "Where is Adrian Hart's daughter?" Alone's breath caught. Nobody had said her father's name since the funeral. The cleaner looked toward her. So did all four men. For several seconds, nobody moved. Aloan tightened her fingers around the flower basket. Cassian's unreadable expression changed first. Not much, only a slight narrowing of his eyes. Bastian's jaw hardened. Dario stared at the child as though someone had struck him. Lucien's hand tightened around the head of his cane. They had expected to find a girl. They had not expected to find her abandoned in the rain. Cassian approached slowly, stopping several feet away so he would not frighten her. "Aloan Hart," she nodded. "My name is Cassian." "I know." A faint look of surprise crossed his face. "My father kept newspaper clippings," she explained. Dario muttered something beneath his breath. Cassian crouched until he was closer to her height. "Where is Celeste Hart?" "She said she would come back." "When?" "5 minutes ago." Bastian glanced at the nearly empty parking area. "How long has she been standing here?" he asked the cleaner. "Almost an hour, perhaps longer." The temperature around the four men seemed to drop. Aloan noticed it even though none of them shouted. Cassian removed his coat and held it out. She did not take it. "Why are you here?" she asked. "To collect something your father left for us," Lucien said. Bastian looked at him sharply. Cassian's eyes remained on Aloan. "And to make sure you were safe." "You don't know me." "No," Cassian agreed. "But we knew your father." Aloan's fingers trembled. "Were you his friends?" The four men exchanged a glance. It was not a simple question. Adrian Hart had been many things during his 38 years of life. A widower, an engineer, a careful father, a man who made pancakes shaped like stars on Sunday mornings. He had also been the secret keeper of Belladonna City. For 12 years, Adrian had designed security networks, underground passages, encrypted ledgers, and emergency routes for all four syndicates. He knew where money moved, where weapons were hidden, which officials had been bought, and which alliances were lies. He had refused to belong to any single organization. That neutrality had kept the four bosses from destroying one another. Then Adrian had died in what the police called a late-night traffic accident. The four men had never believed it was an accident. "We respected him," Lucien answered. Aloan lowered her eyes. "Celeste said bad men came to his funeral." Dario's mouth twisted. "Celeste says many things. She said father worked for criminals." This time, nobody answered. Rain pattered against the dying roses. Cassian draped the coat around Aloan's shoulders without waiting for permission. It nearly swallowed her. "You're freezing." "I'm fine." "You are shivering," Bastian said. "I shake when I'm angry too." For the first time, Dario smiled. It was brief and without humor, but it softened something in his face. "Definitely Adrian's daughter." Cassian rose and turned toward one of his men. "Find Celeste." The man touched a hand to his earpiece. "Sir, we already traced her phone. She left the city 43 minutes ago." "With whom?" Lucien asked. "Lionel Hart." Aloan looked up. "My uncle." The four bosses went completely still. Bastian took one step away, his fist tightening. Dario's smile vanished. Lucien's gaze became cold enough to cut glass. Cassian asked, "Which road?" "Northbound, toward the border." "They won't reach it," Bastian said. There was no anger in his voice. That made the promise more frightening. Aloan looked between them. "Why are you angry?" Cassian faced her again. "Because no child should be left alone. Celeste says I'm not her child." Bastian turned his head as though he could not bear to look at her. Dario crouched beside the empty flower basket and picked up one of the crushed petals. "Did she often leave you alone?" Aloan hesitated. Children learned early when the truth might cause trouble. But there was something about these men. They were frightening, certainly. Their guards stood like statues, and every worker in the hall avoided meeting their eyes. Yet when they looked at her, she did not feel invisible. Sometimes, she admitted. How often? Cashin asked. When she had appointments. What kind of appointments? She said they were private. Lucien's expression suggested that he already understood. What happened to your father's belongings? He asked. Celeste sold some things. She packed the rest. The notebooks. Cashin asked quickly. Alohan's gaze sharpened. She knew immediately which notebooks he meant. The black ones with red stitching. Her father had kept them inside a hidden space beneath the floor of his study. 3 nights before he died, he had shown Alohan how to open it. He had told her never to tell anyone unless 4 specific men came together and asked. At the time, Alohan had thought it was one of their games. Her father loved puzzles. He drew mazes on napkins and hid clues inside storybooks. He taught her that important secrets should never be kept in obvious places. Now 4 men stood before her. Cashin Vare, Bastian Rourke, Lucien Marrow, Dario Sable, exactly as her father had described. Alohan took a careful step backward. Cashin noticed. What did he tell you? He asked. She said nothing. The cleaner watched uneasily from the doorway. Lucien raised one hand, stopping Cashin from pressing further. She has been abandoned, chilled, and surrounded by strangers, he said. This is neither the place nor the moment. Bastian looked at Alohan. Do you have somewhere safe to go? My house. Celeste emptied it. One of Cashin's men reported. Our team arrived 6 minutes ago. Most personal belongings are gone. The locks were changed this morning. Property records show the house was transferred to a holding company last week. Alohan's face went blank. That was my father's house. Yes, Lucien said quietly. She can't sell it. He said it would always be mine. She forged the transfer, Cashin said. We will reverse it. Alohan's chin trembled, but she refused to cry. Crying in front of Celeste had always made things worse. Where do I go now? For men who had commanded armies, survived betrayals, and built criminal empires found themselves unable to answer a 9-year-old child. Cashin spoke first. With me? No, Bastian said immediately. Your estate is a fortress full of accountants and guards. She'll be alone all day. Cashin turned. And your home is attached to a dockyard. It has space. It has forklifts. They're secured. Dario stepped between them. Both of you are impossible. She should come to the Sable residence. My housekeeper raised 6 children, 5 of whom refused to speak to you, Lucien observed. Dario glared at him. They send holiday cards, because your housekeeper forces them. Alohan looked from one man to another. Are you arguing over me? The 4 fell silent. Lucien sighed. It appears so. You don't even know me. Bastian's expression hardened, though not at her. We knew your father. That is enough. No, Alohan said. The single word surprised everyone. She pulled Cashin's coat tighter around herself. My father said people might pretend to care because they wanted what he knew. He said promises are easy when someone wants a secret. Cashin studied her carefully. Wise advice. He also said I should test people. Dario's eyebrows lifted. Ow! Alohan reached into the small pocket sewn into the side of her dress. She removed a brass key no longer than her smallest finger. All 4 men stared at it. The key had 4 symbols engraved around its circular head. A crown, an anchor, a raven, and a flame. The emblems of their organizations. Bastian's voice dropped. Where did you get that? My father. When? Lucien asked. The night before he died. Cashin's composure nearly broke. What did he say? Alohan repeated the words from memory. If the city turns dark, wait until the 4 corners stand beneath one roof. Show them the key, but not the door. The honest ones will protect the child before they search for the treasure. The silence that followed was deeper than the rain. Dario looked at the other 3 men. He knew. Cashin's eyes never left the key. He knew someone was coming for him. And he knew we would eventually come together, Lucien said. Bastian looked toward the road where Celeste had disappeared. Or someone forced him a plan for it. Alohan closed her fingers around the key. Did you pass? She asked. Cashin's expression softened. We have not earned that answer yet. That response seemed to satisfy her. He turned to the others. She cannot remain here. She comes with all of us, Lucien said. Dario frowned. How exactly does that work? We use the Marrow residence. Cashin immediately objected. Your staff is infiltrated by city officials. I replaced the compromised employees 2 months ago. You missed one, Bastian said. Your Eastern Gate supervisor has been feeding schedules to Councilman Drafe. Lucien's eyes narrowed. Since when? Since October. And you neglected to mention it? I was waiting to see who else he contacted. Dario spread his hands. This is exactly why shared guardianship will become a disaster. Eloan tilted her head. What is shared guardianship? For feared men looked suddenly uncomfortable. Lucien recovered first. It means we make decisions together. Do you usually agree? No, all four said. Dario laughed. Even Eloan almost smiled. Cashin turned to the cleaner and handed him a card. You did the right thing by staying with her. Contact this number tomorrow. The cleaner accepted it with a shaking hand. Am I in trouble? No, Cashin said. You are about to own this building. The man stared at him. Cashin looked toward the Grand Hall. The current owners allowed a child to be abandoned on their property without noticing. I disliked their management. There was no boasting in his tone. He spoke as though acquiring a luxury venue overnight were no more complicated than ordering breakfast. Eloan looked through the glass doors at the workers dismantling the wedding. My basket. Bastian retrieved it before anyone else could move. He examined the bent handle. This is broken. Celeste stepped on it. His face darkened. I can carry it, Eloan said. Bastian handed it over carefully. You shouldn't have to carry broken things. Eloan looked at the basket, then at him. Sometimes nobody else will. Something shifted in Bastian's expression. He had grown up in the southern shipyards with a father who disappeared for weeks, and a mother who worked until her hands bled. He understood children who carried what adults had broken. He removed the basket gently from her hand. Not tonight. The convoy left St. Aurelia's 12 minutes later. This time, the four bosses rode in the same armored limousine. Eloan sat between Cashin and Lucien, with Bastian and Dario facing them. None of the men appeared comfortable. Cashin was accustomed to negotiating billion-dollar acquisitions. Bastian could command 300 dockworkers with a glance. Lucien had memorized the weaknesses of every judge, senator, and police chief in Belladonna City. Dario could dismantle a rival surveillance network before breakfast. Not one of them knew how to speak to a silent child in a wet flower girl dress. Dario tried first. Do you like music? Eloan nodded. What kind? My mother played piano. So does Lucien. Lucien looked offended. That information was not yours to share. You played at the winter banquet. Under duress. You played beautifully. Stop speaking. Eloan watched them. Are you brothers? The question changed the air. No, Cashin said. Yes, Bastian said at the same time. They looked at each other. Lucien rested both hands over his cane. Not by blood. Dario leaned back. Your father introduced us when we were young. We formed an alliance. You fight like brothers. Bastian almost smiled. We fight worse. Did my father fight with you? Often, Cashin said. Eloan's eyes widened. Not physically, he clarified. He disagreed with our decisions. He enjoyed telling us when we were being foolish, Lucien added. He told Dario most frequently, Bastian said. Dario ignored him. Eloan looked down at the brass key in her palm. Did you go to his funeral? All of us, Cashin answered. I didn't see you. We stood at the back. Celeste left early. We noticed, Lucien said. Why didn't you speak to me? The men exchanged another glance. Because Celeste had surrounded Eloan with private security. Because Lionel Hart had warned them that approaching the grieving child would bring unwanted police attention. Because the four syndicates had suspected each other of arranging Adrian's death. Because distrust had kept them apart when Eloan needed them most. Cashin did not offer excuses. We should have. Eloan looked through the window. The city lights streaked across the rain-darkened glass. Yes, she whispered. You should have. No one argued. The Marrow residence stood on an island in the center of Lake Orizon, connected to the city by a private stone bridge. The mansion had once belonged to a railway magnate and looked more like a museum than a home. Guards opened the gates. The convoy passed beneath stone ravens carved into the archway. Eloan sat straighter. My father drew this house. Lucien turned toward her. When? In one of his notebooks. What else did he draw? A room with no windows. A clock with 13 numbers. For chairs around a circle. Lucien's calm expression tightened. Dario leaned forward. That room exists. Cashin raised a hand. Not now. Eloan noticed the urgency in their faces and closed her fingers around the key again. The limousine stopped beneath a covered entrance. A gray-haired woman waited at the doors. She wore a dark green dress and sensible shoes, and unlike everyone else Eloan had encountered that evening, she did not look frightened by the four men. She looked annoyed. What have you done? She asked Lucien. Good evening, Mrs. Bell. It is nearly midnight. There are 12 armed vehicles outside. Mr. Rourke is bleeding on my carpet, and Mr. Sable has parked across the herb garden. Dario looked through the window. That was a herb garden. Lucian stepped aside, revealing Eloan. Mrs. Bell's expression changed instantly. Oh, Eloan climbed from a car. The housekeeper approached slowly. What is your name, sweetheart? Eloan. You're soaked. I had a coat. Cashin looked down and realized she was still wearing his. Mrs. Bell's gaze moved across the four bosses. Which one of you is responsible? They all spoke at once. Her stepmother. She was abandoned. Adrian left instructions. We need a secure room. Mrs. Bell lifted one hand. The four most feared men in Belladonna City stopped talking. She needs a bath, warm food, dry clothes, and sleep. Whatever catastrophe you have created can wait until morning. It did not originate with us, Cashin said. Mrs. Bell looked at him. Cashin went silent. Eloan followed the housekeeper upstairs. Halfway to the landing, she looked back. The four men remained in the entrance hall, watching her. Are you leaving? She asked. Bastian answered immediately. No, all of you, all of us, Lucian promised. She studied their faces as though committing the promise to memory. Then she disappeared upstairs. The moment she was gone, the restraint in the entrance hall shattered. Bastian seized a decorative table and shoved it against the wall. A porcelain vase toppled, but Cashin caught it before it hit the floor. She stood outside for an hour, Bastian said. An hour. We heard the cleaner, Cashin replied. And we did nothing after the funeral. We were being watched. We were cowards. Dario paced toward the windows. Celeste did not abandon her impulsively. The property transfer, packed luggage, border route. This was planned. Lucian removed his gloves finger by finger, and Lionel was waiting. Cashin placed the vase back on the table. They know about the notebooks. Do they know Eloan has the key? Bastian asked. No, Dario said. If they did, they would not have left her. Lucian's gaze shifted toward the ceiling. Unless leaving her was meant to draw us out. The room went still. Cashin took out his phone, locked the island. Lucian's security chief immediately began issuing orders through his earpiece. No vehicles across the bridge. Double the guards at the waterline. Search the grounds. Dario moved to a control panel concealed behind a painting. I'll check the cameras. Bastian headed toward the front doors. Cashin caught his arm. Where are you going? To find Celeste. You'll find her after we understand the trap. She left Adrian's child in the rain. And if this was designed to separate us, charging after her is precisely what they want. Bastian pulled his arm free. You always have a calculation, and you always have a fist. Tonight, we need both. Lucian tapped his cane once against the marble floor. Enough. The word carried through the hall. We failed Adrian while he was alive. We failed his daughter after his death. We will not fail her again because we are too proud to stand in the same room. Bastian stared at him. Dario, stop typing. Cashin said nothing. Lucian continued. Until we know who killed Adrian and why. The girl belongs under all four protections. Bastian's jaw tightened. She belongs to herself. Yes, Lucian said. And that means no syndicate claims her as property, leverage, or payment. We claim responsibility. Nothing more. Cashin nodded first. Agreed. Dario followed. Agreed. Bastian looked toward the stairs. Anyone who touches her answers to all of us. Lucian's pale eyes hardened. Precisely. Upstairs, Eloan sat in a copper bathtub filled with warm water and lavender bubbles. Mrs. Bell had placed clean pajamas on a chair and set a bowl of soup on the dressing table. For the first time since morning, Eloan felt warm. But she did not feel safe. Safety had disappeared the night police officers came to the house and said her father's car had gone through a barrier on the mountain road. Safety had vanished when Celeste began locking the study. It had vanished when strangers arrived to remove boxes after midnight. Eloan waited until Mrs. Bell stepped into the adjoining room to answer a telephone call. Then she climbed from the bath, wrapped herself in a towel, and retrieved the flower basket from the floor. Bastian had carried it into the house and placed it outside the bathroom. The basket looked ordinary. It was not. Eloan pressed her thumb beneath a loose strip of wicker. A tiny compartment opened under the base. Inside was a folded piece of paper wrapped in plastic. Her father had hidden it there 3 days before his death. He had made her promise not to open it until the four men were together. Now they were. Eloan unfolded the note. There are only 2 sentences. The first was written in her father's familiar handwriting. The second was not. Her lips moved as she read silently. The 4 men will protect you, but one of their houses contains the person who betrayed me. Trust the one who gives up his kingdom first. A floorboard creaked outside the bathroom. Aloan froze. The handle began to turn. She folded the message quickly, but her wet fingers slipped. The paper fell beneath the chair. The door opened. A man wearing the uniform of Lucien's household security stood in the doorway. He was not Mrs. Bell. Aloan had seen him before. Not at the wedding. Not at the funeral. At her house. He had been standing beside Celeste the night the black notebooks disappeared. The guard smiled and quietly locked the bathroom door behind him. Your stepmother was careless, he said. She should never have left you alive. Downstairs, Dario's fingers flew over the security console. Camera feeds covered the walls. Gates, hallways, kitchens, staircases, the boathouse, and the bridge. Then 3 screens turned black. Dario stopped moving. Lucien, what? Someone just disabled the East Wing cameras. Lucien's face lost all color. The East Wing is where Mrs. Bell took Aloan. Bastian was already running. Cassian drew his weapon. Lucien struck the alarm control with the head of his cane. A siren exploded through the mansion. Upstairs, the false guard reached inside his jacket as Aloan backed against the bathtub. Give me the key, he said. Footsteps thundered through the corridor. The man's smile vanished. He lunged toward her, and Aloan screamed. The scream tore through the East Wing. Bastian reached the staircase first. He did not slow at the landing. He took the final steps 2 at a time, one hand gripping the banister while the other drew a pistol from beneath his coat. Cassian followed with controlled speed, scanning every doorway. Lucien came behind them, his cane striking the floor in sharp, furious beats. Dario remained half a step ahead of the security team, shouting directions into his phone. Seal the bridge. Nobody leaves the island. Shut down the boathouse and cut power to every private dock. The East Wing corridor was already filling with guards when Bastian crashed into the bathroom door. It did not open. Move, he growled. One of Lucien's men reached for the lock. Bastian drove his shoulder into the wood before the guard could touch it. The frame cracked. He struck it again. The door burst inward. The false guard had one hand around Aloan's wrist. The other was reaching toward the brass, key clutched in her fist. He turned at the sound of the splintering door. That single moment of distraction was enough. Aloan bit down on his hand. The man shouted and released her. She dropped beneath his arm, slid across the wet floor, and scrambled behind a copper bathtub. Bastian crossed the room in 3 strides. The intruder reached inside his jacket. Bastian hit him before he could draw whatever he was reaching for. The force of the blow sent the man into the wall. A framed mirror shattered. Cassian entered with his weapon raised. Alive, he ordered. Bastian caught the attacker by the front of his uniform and dragged him upright. You frightened her. His voice was quieter than a whisper. The man looked into Bastian's face and understood that silence did not mean mercy. I was following orders. Whose? The man said nothing. Bastian slammed him against the wall again. Whose? Enough, Lucien said. He had reached the doorway and was looking past the attacker. Aloan. She sat pressed into the narrow space between the tub and the wall. Her damp hair clung to her face. The towel had slipped from one shoulder, and her fingers were wrapped tightly around the brass key. Lucien handed his cane to a guard and lowered himself carefully to the floor. It is over, he told her. Her eyes flicked toward the false guard. No, it isn't. Cassian stepped between her and the man. He cannot reach you. He was at my house. Every person in the room went still. When Cassian asked, the night Celeste took father's notebooks. Lucien turned his head slowly toward the intruder. Remove him. 2 guards seized the man. Bastian did not release his shirt. Mr. Rourke, Mrs. Bell said from behind the security team. She had arrived carrying Aloan's pajamas and looked more furious than frightened. The child comes first. Bastian stared at the intruder for 1 more second. Then he let go. Take him below, Lucien ordered. Search him, confirm his identity, and bring me every record connected to his employment. The guard dragged the man away. Mrs. Bell crossed the room, wrapped Aloan in a thick robe, and held out her hand. Aloan did not take it. She looked at the 4 bosses. One of you has a traitor in your house. Lucien's face tightened. Yes, my father knew. Cassian crouched beside the tub. What exactly did he tell you? Aloan's gaze dropped toward the chair. The note lay beneath it. Dario noticed first. He bent down and retrieved the folded paper. May I? Aloan nodded. He opened it carefully. His usual restlessness disappeared as he read. Cassian took the note from him. Bastian moved behind his shoulder. Lucien remained beside Aloan. The 4 men read Adrian's warning in silence. The 4 men will protect you, but one of their houses contains the person who betrayed me. Trust the one who gives up his kingdom first. Dario spoke first. That could mean any of us. No, Bastian said. It means one of us must surrender control. Cashin studied the handwriting. The first line is Adrian's. The second is not, Lucian said. Eloan nodded. I noticed. Do you recognize it? Cashin asked. No. Dario took a photograph of the note. We'll compare it against Adrian's known contacts. Cashin folded it again and handed it back to Eloan. You keep it. What? Because your father left it for you? Not us. Eloan slipped the paper into the pocket of the robe. Mrs. Bell looked at the shattered bathroom door. She will not remain in this wing. No, Lucian agreed. She stays in my quarters, Cashin said. Bastian turned. Why yours? Because my security detail was brought from outside this house. So is mine. Your men are armed dock enforcers. Not exactly comforting company for a child. They are loyal. To you, Lucian said. That is no longer enough. Dario looked from one man to another. Adrian's warning says one of our houses is compromised. We cannot assume this begins and ends with Lucian. Cashin lowered his weapon. Then none of our homes is safe. Eloan watched them argue. For men who could decide the fate of neighborhoods before breakfast were once again unable to agree where a child should sleep. Finally, she said, I know where we can go. They turned toward her. My father had another house. Cashin frowned. The property records show only the city residence. It wasn't in his name. Where is it? Dario asked. Eloan looked at him. He told me not to say unless all 4 of you were together. We are, Bastian said. No, he said together without guards. The men exchanged glances. Lucian dismissed the security team. Mrs. Bell remained. Eloan looked at her. She can stay. Mrs. Bell gave the bosses a look that suggested they were the least trustworthy people in the room. Once the corridor was empty, Eloan climbed to her feet. There's an old train station under the Easter Market. Father called at the glass house. Dario's expression sharpened. There hasn't been a station beneath the market for 40 years. There is, Eloan said. You enter through a locked storage room behind the clock shop. Lucian slowly rose. Adrian designed the market's renovation. Cashin looked at Dario. Pull the original plans. I already am. Dario typed quickly. A schematic appeared on his phone. His eyes widened. There is a sealed maintenance level beneath the public tunnels. Bastian looked at Eloan. Why did your father show you this? He said every person should know one place where nobody else can find them. Cashin's jaw tightened. Pack nothing, he said. We leave in 5 minutes. Lucian looked around his own mansion. You are suggesting we abandon the island. The house has been breached, Cashin replied. It can be secured. By whom? Dario asked. Your staff? Your guards? The same system that allowed someone to walk in her bathroom. Lucian's face went cold. Bastian looked at him. This is what the message means. Lucian held his gaze. Explain. Give up your kingdom first. The words settled over them. The Marrow residence was Lucian's center of power. His archives, intelligence rooms, private offices, and security network were all housed on the island. Leaving it meant surrendering the advantage of home. It meant trusting the other 3 men with his secrets. Lucian looked toward the windows. Beyond them, the lake was black beneath the night sky. Then he removed a silver signet ring from his hand and held it out to his security chief, who waited at the far end of the corridor. Lock the residence, Lucian said. Evacuate every employee in groups of 3. Search all personal belongings. Nobody returns until I authorize it. The chief accepted the ring. What about the archives, sir? Seal them. And if the island is attacked? Lucian looked at Eloan. Let it burn. Bastian's expression changed. Cashin's did too. Lucian had made his choice. He had given up his kingdom first. Eloan stepped closer to him. My father said to trust you. Lucian looked down at her. That may have been his first mistake. No, Eloan said. He said you would say something like that. For the first time that night, Lucian almost smiled. They left the island in a convoy of 2 vehicles instead of 12. Dario drove the first. Cashin sat beside him. Eloan rode in the back between Lucian and Bastian, wrapped in a wool blanket with Mrs. Bell's soup balanced in her lap. The second vehicle carried only 4 guards, each chosen from a different syndicate. Nobody spoke for the first 10 minutes. Then Eloan asked, what will happen to the man from the bathroom? Bastian answered too quickly. He will tell us who sent him. Cashin turned slightly in the front seat. He will be questioned. Will you hurt him? The silence that followed told her more than the answer would have. Lucian spoke carefully. He tried to harm you. We will make sure he cannot do it again. Aloan stared down at her soup. My father said, cruel people become worse when you become like them. Bastian looked out the window. We are not good men. That doesn't mean you have to be the worst men. Dario glanced at her through the mirror. You sound exactly like him. Father said that when he was annoyed with me. No, Dario replied. He said it when he was proud. Aloan looked up. How do you know? Because he said the same thing about us. The Easter market was silent when they arrived. During the day, its streets overflowed with merchants selling spices, clocks, fabric, jewelry, and old books. At 2 in the morning, the narrow roads were empty except for rainwater dripping from striped awnings. Dario parked behind a row of shuttered shops. The 4 guards remained outside. Cashin checked the alley. Which door? Aloan pointed toward a clock shop with a faded golden sign. Bastian tried the handle. Locked. Dario crouched before it, removed a small tool from his pocket, and opened the door within seconds. Aloan watched him. Is that legal? No, Dario said. Cashin looked at him. Dario sighed. It is legal tonight. Inside, hundreds of clocks ticked in the darkness. Wall clocks, pocket watches, grandfather clocks, tiny brass clocks shaped like ships, birds, and towers. Their combined ticking filled the shop like rain striking glass. Aloan moved through them without hesitation. She stopped beside a tall wooden clock at the rear wall. My father said the time is always wrong. Lucian examined the face. The clock showed 13 numbers, exactly as Aloan had described. She turned the hour hand to 13 and the minute hand to 4. A mechanism clicked. The clock slid sideways, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Dario stared. Adrian built a hidden entrance inside a hidden room beneath a market. Cashin switched on a flashlight. He expected trouble. No, Lucian said. He expected war. They descended. The staircase ended at a steel door. There were 4 keyholes positioned around a circular plate. Aloan held up the brass key. It only opens one. Bastian studied the plate. The other 3 keys? My father said the men would bring them. The 4 bosses looked at one another. Cashin reached beneath his shirt and pulled out a chain. A narrow black key hung from it. Bastian removed a brass key from the inner lining of his coat. Lucian opened the head of his cane and withdrew a silver key. Dario stared at them. You all had keys? Adrian gave mine to me 14 years ago, Cashin said. Bastian nodded. Mine too. Lucian's expression darkened. He told us never to discuss them. Dario searched his pockets. I don't have one. Aloan looked at him. Yes, you do. I think I would know. Father said yours would be hidden in the first thing you stole from him. Dario stopped. Then he laughed once, without amusement. He knew about that. He knew everything, Lucian said. Dario reached beneath his collar and removed a battered copper coin attached to a leather cord. He had taken it from Adrian's desk when he was 16. At the time, Dario had been a restless street thief newly recruited into Cashin's organization. Adrian had caught him but never demanded the coin back. Dario turned it over. A thin seam ran along the edge. He pressed it with his thumbnail. The coin separated. A tiny key rested inside. They placed all 4 keys into the door. Aloan inserted hers into the center. Turn together, she said. 5 hands moved at once. The locks released. The steel door opened. The room beyond was enormous. Glass walls divided it into offices, sleeping quarters, a medical room, a kitchen, and a central circular chamber. Old railway tunnels extended into darkness on both sides. Emergency lights flickered on automatically. Dust covered some surfaces, but the air was clean. A generator hummed beneath the floor. The glass house had been waiting for them. In the central room stood 4 chairs around a circular table, and a 5th chair smaller than the others. On the table lay a sealed metal case. Aloan approached it. Her father's handwriting was written across the top. For the 4 who built the city and the child who may have to save it. Bastian stared at the words. What did Adrian know? More than we did, Cashin replied. The case required Aloan's key. When she opened it, 5 black notebooks lay inside. 1 bore Cashin's emblem. 1 bore Bastian's. 1 bore Lucian's. 1 bore Dario's. The 5th had Aloan's name written across the cover. Dario picked up his notebook. Are these records about us? Lucian opened his. No. Inside were names, dates, diagrams, coded transfers, photographs, and handwritten observations. Cashin turned several pages. This is a map of corruption inside our organizations. Bastian found a list of dock workers and shipping officials. Some of these men have worked for me for 20 years. Adrian suspected a coordinated infiltration, Lucian said. Dario flipped through photographs. Police, council members, security contractors, customs officers. Cashin's voice became grim. Someone has spent years placing people around all 4 syndicates. Eloan opened her notebook. The first page contained a letter. My brave little bird, if you're reading this, then I was not able to come home. Eloan stopped breathing. Her fingers pressed against the paper. The room around her disappeared. She heard her father's voice as clearly as though he stood beside her. I am sorry I left you with questions. I am more sorry that I left you with Celeste. I believed I could control the danger around us. I was wrong. The 4 men standing with you are dangerous, stubborn, and sometimes foolish. They have all done things I wish they had not done. But each of them once chose loyalty when betrayal would have been easier. That is why I trust them with you. Do not let them turn you into a symbol, a weapon, or a debt. Make them remember that you are a child before you become anything else. Eloan's vision blurred. She wiped her eyes angrily. Bastian crouched beside her. You were allowed to cry. Celeste hated it. Celeste is not here. That doesn't make it stop. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. Eloan continued reading. The person behind the conspiracy calls himself the Regent. He does not want one empire. He wants all 4. He believes the easiest way to rule Belladonna is to make Cashin, Bastian, Lucian, and Dario destroy one another. My death will be used to begin that war. Do not let it. The notebooks contain enough evidence to expose his network, but not enough to identify him. For that, you must find a 5th witness. Eloan turned the page. A photograph had been attached beneath the words. It showed her father standing beside a woman in a hospital corridor. The woman's face had been partially turned away from the camera, but Eloan recognized her. Her hand began to shake. Cashin noticed. Who is she? Eloan looked up. My mother. The bosses stared at the photograph. They all knew Eloan's mother, Mireia Hart, had supposedly died 7 years earlier after a sudden illness. Yet the date printed beneath the photograph was only 6 months old. Bastian rose slowly. That is impossible. No, Lucian said. He studied the image. Look at the wall sign. The hospital logo belonged to a private clinic in northern Italy. Dario took the photograph. This was taken after Mireia's reported death. Eloan looked from one man to another. He said my mother was dead. We believe she was, Cashin said. Father told me she was. Lucian's eyes narrowed. Perhaps he believed lying was the only way to protect you. The next line in the notebook was written in red ink. The 5th witness is Mireia Hart. Find her before the Regent does. A telephone rang. Every person in the room froze. The glass house should not have had an active outside line. The sound came from a black telephone mounted on the far wall. 1 ring. 2. 3. Dario approached it cautiously. Do not answer, Cashin said. The ringing stopped. Then a small printer beneath the telephone came alive. A strip of paper emerged. Dario tore it free. His face changed as he read. What? Bastian asked. Dario handed the message to Cashin. The child opened the door. Thank you. Cashin's head snapped toward the tunnels. Someone followed us. The emergency lights went out. Darkness swallowed the glass house. A mechanical lock slammed into place behind them. Eloan heard weapons being drawn. Cashin's voice cut through the blackness. Stay where you are. A red emergency light flickered on above the far tunnel. A figure stood beneath it. Not a guard. Not Celeste. A woman. She wore a long dark coat and held a pistol at her side. Her face was pale and tired, but Eloan knew it from the photographs beside her bed. The shape of her eyes. The small scar near her chin. The way she tilted her head when afraid. Mama, Eloan whispered. The woman's expression broke. Eloan moved. Cashin caught her gently around the waist. Wait, that's my mother. The woman stepped forward. Bastian raised his weapon. Do not come closer. Mireia stopped. I am not your enemy. You have been dead for 7 years, Lucian said. You will forgive our skepticism. Mireia looked at the notebooks. You opened the case. Yes, Cashin replied. Then Adrian is dead. Eloan stared at her. You didn't know? Mireia's eyes filled with grief. I have been cut off from Belladonna for 3 months. I came when the emergency signal activated. You left me. The words were small, but they struck harder than any accusation shouted in anger. Mireia lowered her weapon. I did. Why? Because men threatened to kill you. Father said you died. He had to. No, he didn't. Eloan, you left me with Celeste. Mireia's face changed. What? She abandoned me at a wedding. Mireia looked at the 4 men. Where is Celeste? Running, Dario said. For now, Maria closed her eyes. I warned Adrian not to trust her. Lucien stepped between Maria and Aloan. Who is the regent? Maria looked toward the sealed steel door. We do not have much time. Answer him, Bastian said. The regent is not one man. Cassian frowned. It is a council. 5 people, Maria continued. 1 embedded within each syndicate and 1 outside all of them. Adrian discovered 4 identities. He hid them in the notebooks. And the 5th? Dario asked. Maria looked at Aloan. The 5th person is someone close enough to Adrian to alter his plans, forge his handwriting, and manipulate his family. Aloan touched the note in her robe pocket. The second sentence had not been written by her father. Trust the one who gives up his kingdom first. Lucien saw the realization in her face. The warning was planted. Maria nodded. They wanted us to leave the island, Cassian said. They wanted us here, Dario added. A dull impact echoed through the tunnel. Then another. Someone was striking the outer barrier. Maria raised her pistol. They follow my signal. Bastian moved toward the tunnel. How many? Enough. Cassian turned to Dario. Can you restore power? I need the control room. Where? Aloan pointed toward the glass offices. My father drew a lightning symbol on the 3rd door. Dario ran. Lucien opened his notebook. The infiltrators' names may tell us who is attacking. Cassian took command without raising his voice. Bastian, tunnel entrance. Lucien, find emergency exits. Maria, stay where I can see you. And Aloan? Bastian asked. Cassian looked at the child. Aloan stays with me. No, Aloan said. This is not negotiable. My father built this place. I know the map. You are 9, and you don't know where anything is. Cassian stared at her. Under other circumstances, Dario might have left. Another impact shook dust from the ceiling. Aloan grabbed her notebook and opened to the final pages. There's a service tunnel beneath the kitchen. It leads to the old river line. Lucien turned pages rapidly. I see no mention of it. Because it's in my notebook. Cassian's jaw tightened. Lead us there. They moved into the kitchen area as the outer barrier groaned beneath another strike. Aloan found a metal panel beneath the pantry shelves. Bastian pulled it free. A ladder descended into darkness. How far? He asked. Father said 800 steps. That is not a distance. He liked counting. The lights flickered back on. Dario's voice came through hidden speakers. I have partial power. Bad news. The tunnel cameras show at least 15 armed intruders. Good news. Cassian asked. The glass house has defense shutters. Steel barriers slammed down throughout the complex. The pounding at the entrance stopped. For half a second, everyone relaxed. Then Dario spoke again. Worse news. Someone inside the system is overriding me. Maria looked toward the ceiling. The region has Adrian's master codes. That means they could seal the escape tunnel, Lucien said. Aloan climbed onto the ladder. Cassian caught her shoulder. You go after Bastian. Bastian descended first. Aloan followed. Lucien came next, then Maria. Cassian waited for Dario. Through the kitchen glass, shadows moved beyond the security shutters. A voice crackled over the speakers. Aloan Hart. Everyone stopped. The voice was distorted. You have something that belongs to us. Aloan held her key tightly. Cassian looked up at the nearest speaker. She belongs to no one. A soft laugh came through the system. We are not speaking about the child. The lights shut off again. Gunfire struck the outer shutters. The metal rang violently. Move, Cassian ordered. They descended into the service tunnel. Dario reached the kitchen just as Cassian climbed onto the ladder. I lost control of the system. Then leave it. Dario looked back at the glass house. My notebook. Cassian had his. Bastian had carried Aloan's. Lucien had tucked his beneath his coat. Dario's remained on the circular table. Forget it. It contains the names of traitors in my organization. And they want you to go back for it. Dario looked toward the darkened central room. For years, he had survived because he moved faster than fear. He had never abandoned information, never walked away from leverage, never surrendered an advantage. Cassian reached toward him. Dario. A figure appeared behind the glass wall. Then another. The attackers had entered through a ventilation passage. Dario fired twice through the glass, forcing them back. Go! Cassian descended. Dario followed and pulled the panel shut above them. The escape tunnel was barely wide enough for one person at a time. Water dripped from the ceiling. The air smelled of rust and earth. Bastian carried Aloan when the path became flooded. She held her notebook against her chest. Behind them, the panel above the ladder opened. Voices echoed into the tunnel. They found us, Mireia said. Bastion moved faster. The passage split ahead. 3 directions. Aloan shone a small light across the walls. Her father had carved symbols into the brick. A raven, a flame, an anchor, a crown, and beneath them, a bird. That way, she said, pointing left. Lucien looked at the markings. How do you know? The bird always points home. They took the left tunnel. The footsteps behind them grew louder. Cassian stopped at a narrow bend. Keep moving. Bastion turned. What are you doing? Buying time. No, take her out. Aloan looked over Bastion's shoulder. You promised all of you were coming. Cassian's expression tightened. We are. Then move. A door appeared ahead. It had no handle. Only 5 circular indentations. Aloan understood. The keys. They inserted them quickly. The lock opened. Beyond it was an old railway platform beside an underground river. A narrow motorboat waited at the edge. Dario climbed aboard and started the engine. Bastion placed Aloan inside. Mireia followed. Lucien stepped onto the boat. Cassian remained on the platform, aiming down the tunnel. The attackers rounded the bend. Their faces were hidden behind black masks. Cassian fired toward the ceiling above them. Stone and dust fell, forcing them back. Cassian! Bastion shouted. Cassian ran and jumped onto the boat. Dario accelerated. The engine roared through the underground channel. Shots echoed behind them, striking the water. Then the tunnel curved and the attackers disappeared. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Aloan sat between Bastion and Mireia. She did not lean toward her mother. Mireia did not try to touch her. The river carried them beneath the city. Dario kept his eyes forward. Lucien examined the wet notebook beneath his coat. Cassian watched the darkness behind them. Bastion kept one arm around Aloan to stop her sliding whenever the boat turned. At last, daylight appeared ahead. They emerged into an abandoned canal beyond the industrial district. Dario slowed near a crumbling dock. We cannot return to any of our properties, nor use syndicate vehicles, Lucien said. Cassian looked at Mireia. You knew the glass house was compromised. I knew Adrian's emergency signal might be monitored, and yet you activated it. I did not. Silence fell. Dario turned. The signal activated when we opened the metal case. Mireia shook her head. No, Adrian designed it to activate only when Aloan's key entered the central lock. Aloan looked at the brass key. Cassian's gaze hardened. The key contains a transmitter. Dario held out his hand. Aloan gave it to him reluctantly. He twisted the circular head. A tiny electronic chip was hidden inside. That was not made 14 years ago, Dario said. This was installed recently. Celeste had the key, Aloan whispered. When? Bastion asked. She dressed me for the wedding. I left it in my room for a few minutes. Mireia's face tightened. She planted the tracker. Lucien looked across the canal. The wedding was not only an abandonment. It was bait. They expected us to collect her, Cassian said. They expected her to lead us to the glass house. Bastion's arm tightened around Aloan. She was never collateral. No, Cassian said. She was the key. The words hurt. Aloan pulled away from Bastion and stood unsteadily in the boat. Everyone keeps using me. No one here will, Bastion said. You already did. You followed me to Father's house. Cassian looked at her. She is right. Bastion stared at him. We came because we cared about Adrian, Cassian continued. But we also wanted his secrets. Aloan's eyes filled with angry tears. Then you're no different from Celeste. Mireia flinched. Lucien closed his notebook. We are different in one way. What way? We can choose to stop. He removed the notebook bearing his emblem and placed it in Aloan's lap. This contains every weakness in my organization. You decide whether I ever see it. Cassian did the same. Then Bastion. Dario hesitated. His notebook remained inside the glass house. Instead, he removed the copper coin from his neck and handed it to her. It was Adrian's. I should have returned it years ago. Aloan looked at the objects in her lap. Their secrets, their power, their kingdoms, given up willingly. She understood the message now. Trust the one who gives up his kingdom first. Perhaps the sentence had been planted to manipulate them, but the choice it demanded was still real. Lucien had abandoned his mansion. Cassian had surrendered his leverage. Bastion had put her safety before revenge. Dario had left behind a notebook that could save his empire. One by one, they had chosen her. Not because they owned her, because they had decided she mattered more than control. Aloan looked at Mireia. What will you give up? Mireia's face went pale. My life, if necessary. That's not what I asked. The boat drifted beside the dock. Mireia slowly removed a small memory drive from beneath her collar. For 7 years, I have carried the Regent's accounts, names, and payment trails. Lucian stared at it. That could destroy every member of the council. Yes. Why didn't you send it to Adrian? Cashin asked. Because it is encrypted to my heartbeat pattern. If anyone stole it, it became useless. Dario leaned forward. You were the fifth witness and the final lock. Maria placed the drive in Aloan's hand. This is what I give up. Aloan closed her fingers around it. Why did you leave? Maria's composure broke. Because the Regent threatened to kill you in front of me. Adrian and I staged my death so I could disappear and collect evidence. We believed it would take months. It took 7 years. I know. You missed my birthdays. I know. You missed Father's funeral. Maria covered her mouth. I know. Aloan's voice trembled. I needed you. Maria did not defend herself. I know. The honesty made it worse and better at the same time. Aloan began to cry. Not quietly. Not politely. She cried for the wedding arch, the empty house, her father's funeral, 7 missing birthdays, and every night Celeste had told her nobody wanted her. Maria reached toward her, then stopped. Aloan looked at her mother's open arms. For several seconds, she did not move. Then she crossed the small space and fell against her. Maria held her tightly. Bastian looked away. Dario pretended to examine the engine. Cashin stared across the canal. Lucian lowered his head. The 4 bosses had seen cities burn, alliances collapse, and powerful men beg. None of them knew what to do with the sound of a child finally allowing herself to grieve. They gave her time. When Aloan's sobs quieted, Maria brushed the damp hair from her face. I cannot ask you to forgive me today. I don't. You should not. But you can stay. Maria closed her eyes. I will. Cashin stepped onto the dock. We need a location unconnected to all 4 syndicates. Maria looked toward the industrial district. I know one. An hour later, they entered an abandoned neighborhood clinic that had been closed for renovations. The upper floors were empty. The basement contained a secure records room with no windows and only one entrance. Dario disconnected every network cable. Lucian checked the exits. Bastian searched the building twice. Cashin contacted only 4 people, 1 from each organization, and gave each a different location. If the Regent's men arrive at any of them, he explained, we will know which syndicate leaked. Maria connected the memory drive to an isolated computer. Lines of encrypted data appeared. Dario sat beside her. How long? If Adrian's code still works, minutes. Aloan stood behind them, holding the black notebooks. The screen flashed. Access granted. Folders appeared. Council payments. Political bribes. Security placements. Medical records. Surveillance photographs. Cashin opened a folder labeled Heart. Inside were files on Adrian, Maria, Aloan, Celeste, and Lionel. Bastian opened Celeste's file. She received payments for 5 years. Maria's face tightened. From whom? The payment account was hidden behind layers of corporations. Dario traced them quickly. The final entity appeared. Mero Civic Foundation. Every eye turned toward Lucian. Lucian stared at the screen. That foundation belongs to my family. Bastian's hand moved toward his weapon. Cashin stepped between them. Wait. Lucian's expression did not change. My uncle controls its operations. Your uncle is dead, Dario said. No, Lucian replied. My uncle was declared dead. Maria looked at him. Severin Mero. The name seemed to drain the air from the room. Severin had founded the Mero Syndicate before Lucian took control. He had been cruel, ambitious, and obsessed with uniting Belladonna under one ruler. 12 years earlier, his yacht had exploded at sea. No body had been recovered. Lucian's voice was almost empty. He is the Regent. The computer chimed. An incoming live video opened by itself. A man appeared on the screen. He was older, silver-haired, and seated in a dark room. One side of his face bore the scars of old burns. Lucian gripped his cane. Uncle. Severin smiled. My disappointing heir. Aloan stepped behind Bastian. Severin noticed. And there she is. Adrian's final safeguard. Cashin leaned toward the screen. You lost the glass house. No. I confirmed who holds the notebooks. Dario reached for the computer cable. Disconnected. Do that, Severin said. And Celeste's heart dies before she tells you where Lionel took the remaining evidence. Aloan froze. A second video feed appeared. Celeste sat tied to a chair in a bare room. Her face was bruised, but she was conscious. Beside her stood Lionel. He was not tied. He was smiling. Aloan's stomach turned. You left me, she whispered. Lionel looked toward the camera. She was becoming inconvenient. Celeste twisted toward him. You said we were leaving together. You believed what was useful. Severin folded his hands. Family betrayal is painfully predictable. Maria stood beside Aloan. What do you want? The notebooks, the drive, and the girl. Bastian stepped closer to the screen. You will never have her. Then Celeste dies. Aloan looked at the woman who had abandoned her beneath the wedding arch. Celeste had lied to her, taken her home, sold her father's belongings, helped place a tracker in the key. She had not cared whether Aloan survived, and yet Aloan did not want to watch her die. My father said becoming cruel doesn't undo cruelty, she said. Bastian looked at her. You do not owe Celeste mercy. No, but I owe myself the choice. Cassian studied her face. What are you thinking? Aloan looked at Severin. I'll trade. For voices, answer at once. No. Aloan ignored them. You want the key and the notebooks. I'll bring them. Severin smiled. Aloan, Maria began. But only if Celeste and Lionel are both released first. Lionel's smile vanished. Severin glanced toward him. Interesting. Lionel stepped closer to the camera. She's a child. She doesn't set terms. Aloan lifted her chin. My father said people reveal themselves when they think a child isn't listening. She opened her notebook. Lionel Hart received payments through the Marrow Civic Foundation for 6 years. Lionel's face changed. He arranged father's car accident. Aloan continued. Celeste moved the notebooks. But Lionel gave Severin the route. Bastian looked at the file. She was right. Aloan had noticed the dates before any of them. Severin's smile faded. You are Adrian's daughter. Yes. And you were stalling. Yes. The clinic lights went out. Dario stood instantly. They found one of the false locations. His phone vibrated. He checked it. The team sent to Cassian's warehouse was attacked. Every head turned toward Cassian. Cassian's expression remained still. The leak came from my organization. Severin's laughter filled the computer speakers. Not one house, Lucien. All 4. The video vanished. Emergency lights flickered on. Cassian looked at the others. Severin knows this location now. How? Bastian asked. Dario stared at the computer. The call carried a tracer. Maria pulled the drive free. A noise sounded above them. Not footsteps. Engines. Several vehicles stopped outside the clinic. Bastian drew his weapon. Cassian moved toward the only door. Lucien opened the notebooks to the building plans. Dario searched for another exit. Maria pulled Aloan close. Then the clinic's front windows shattered upstairs. Men entered the building. Severin's voice came through the emergency intercom. You have nowhere left to run. Cassian looked at the 4 bosses, the mother who had returned from the dead, and the child at the center of the war. Yes, he said quietly. We do. He turned to Aloan. Your father built safe places. She nodded. But he also built traps. A slow understanding passed across her face. She opened her notebook to the map of the clinic. At the bottom of the page, Adrian had drawn 5 circles around a single word. Bell. Aloan looked toward the old fire alarm beside the basement door. Pull it. Bastian broke the glass and pulled the lever. No alarm sounded. Instead, steel doors slammed down throughout the building. Gas hissed into the upper hallways. The men above began shouting. Dario checked the security panel. It's harmless sleeping gas. Cassian almost smiled. Adrian did prefer elegant solutions. One by one, the footsteps upstairs stopped. Silence returned. They waited. Then Bastian opened the basement door. More than a dozen attackers lay unconscious across the clinic floor. Lucien looked at Aloan. You saved us. My father did. No, Cassian said. He left the pieces. You understood them. Dario searched the nearest attacker. He found a phone. The last message on the screen gave an address. A church outside the city. Bastian looked toward Aloan. Celeste and Lionel. Cassian checked the time. The message says the exchange happens at sunrise. Maria took Aloan's hands. You are not going. Aloan looked at the 4 bosses. They will expect me. They will not get you. Bastian said. What if you pretend they do? Dario's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? Aloan looked down at the 5 notebooks. Severin wants father's secrets because he thinks secrets are power. She placed the books inside the metal case. So, give him secrets. Lucien understood first. False notebooks. Dario smiled slowly. We replaced the files with corrupted data. Cassian considered the plan. He will inspect them. Not if the church is surrounded. Lionel is exposed. Celeste is rescued. And every member of the Regent Council receives evidence that Severin intends to betray them. Maria stared at her daughter. Where did you learn to think like this? Eloan wiped the last of her tears from her cheeks. From being quiet when adults thought I wasn't listening. The old church stood on a hill beyond Belladonna City. Sunrise turned the clouds gold behind its broken bell tower. A black car approached along the narrow road. Cashin drove. Lucien sat beside him. Bastian and Dario rode in the back. Between them sat a small figure wearing a blue flower girl dress. At least, that was what the watchers near the church believed. The figure's face was hidden beneath a veil. The real Eloan watched through a camera from a secure van 2 miles away. Mrs. Bell sat beside her. Maria monitored the encrypted channels. The veiled figure in the car was one of Cashin's smallest security officers wearing a padded disguise. The metal case beside her contained 5 false notebooks and a transmitter. Severin stood at the church entrance. Lionel held Celeste by the arm. Armed men waited behind the stone walls. The 4 bosses stepped out. "You brought the girl," Severin said. "We brought your ending," Lucien replied. Severin smiled. "You still speak like a man who believes he has choices." Cashin placed the metal case on the ground. "Release Celeste." Lionel pushed her forward. Celeste stumbled down the steps. Bastian caught her before she fell. She looked at the veiled figure. "Eloan." The figure said nothing. Guilt broke across Celeste's face. "I'm sorry." Bastian's expression hardened. "You can tell her yourself if you survive the next 10 minutes. Severin descended the steps. The case. Dario kicked it toward him. Severin opened it. The transmitter activated. Across Belladonna City, files began sending automatically to judges, journalists, police oversight offices, rival syndicates, and every member of the Regent Council. Evidence of Severin's payments, his assassinations, his plans to eliminate his own partners. The phones of the men around the church began vibrating. One checked his screen, then another. Confusion spread. Lionel looked at his own phone. His face went pale. Severin opened the first notebook. The pages were blank. He looked up. Cashin smiled without warmth. "You spent years convincing us to destroy one another." Lucien stepped forward. "You forgot Adrian taught us how to recognize manipulation." Bastian moved Celeste behind him. Dario drew his weapon. "And you forgot the child listens." Severin's men began lowering their guns. They had seen the files. They knew Severin had planned to sacrifice them. Lionel backed toward the church. Severin turned on him. "You failed." Lionel reached for his weapon. Celeste kicked the back of his knee. He fell. Bastian disarmed him before he could rise. Severin looked around. His council was collapsing. His men were abandoning him. The 4 bosses stood united before him. "You think this ends with me?" he said. "No," Lucien answered. "It begins without you." Sirens sounded in the distance. Not ordinary police sirens. Federal units. Financial investigators. Internal affairs. Every agency Severin had bribed was now rushing to appear innocent by arresting him first. Severin looked at the veiled figure in the car. "You never brought her." Cashin's gaze became glacial. "We would never hand you a child." Severin laughed bitterly. "Then Adrian won." "No." Eloan's voice said through the car's hidden speaker. Everyone turned. She watched from the van as Severin stared toward the sound. "My father died," she continued. "Nobody wins that." Severin's face changed. For the first time, he looked old. The authorities reached the hill. His remaining men surrendered. Lionel was taken into custody. Severin did not resist. Celeste stood beside the road, shaking. When it was over, the 4 bosses returned to the secure van. Eloan stepped out before they reached it. Bastian was the first to kneel. "You were supposed to stay inside." "I did until it was safe." "That is not the same thing." She threw her arms around him. He stopped speaking. Cashin placed a hand on her shoulder. Dario ruffled her hair and immediately apologized when she glared at him. Lucien stood a little apart. Eloan walked to him. "You gave up your house first. It can be rebuilt. Is that why I should trust you?" "No," Lucien said. "You should trust us only when our choices deserve it." Eloan nodded. That was the right answer. Mireia joined them. For a moment, the child stood surrounded by 5 adults who had all failed her in different ways. A mother who had vanished. For men who had stayed away too long. None of them could repair the past, but all of them could choose what happened next. Celeste approached slowly under the watch of 2 officers. "Eloan." Bastian stepped forward. Eloan touched his sleeve. "It's okay." Celeste looked smaller than she had beneath the wedding arch. "I was afraid," she said. "Lionel said Severin would kill me if I didn't help. You took father's things." "Yes." "You changed the house papers." "Yes." "You left me." Celeste's face crumpled. "Yes." Eloan looked at her for a long time. "I don't forgive you." Celeste lowered her head. But I hope you become someone who would never do it again." Celeste began to cry. The officers led her away. Weeks later, Belladonna's city changed. The evidence from Morea's drive dismantled the Regent Council. Corrupt officials resigned. Security chiefs disappeared into custody. The four syndicate survived, but not unchanged. Cashin opened his financial network to independent oversight. Bastion removed every underage runner from the docks and funded schools in the Southern District. Dario turned his surveillance division toward exposing trafficking and official corruption. Lucien converted the Marrow residence into a protected home for children whose families had been caught in organized crime. He gave up his kingdom and replaced it with something better. The four men also signed a legal guardianship agreement unlike anything Belladonna's courts had seen. Morea remained Alone's mother. The four bosses became her protectors, trustees, and deeply argumentative honorary uncles. They did not always agree. Cashin believed bedtime should be exact. Bastion believed rules could be flexible if Alone had finished her homework. Dario taught her how to bypass digital locks until Morea threatened to throw his computers into the lake. Lucien taught her piano and pretended not to enjoy it. Mrs. Bell controlled all of them. The glass house was restored. The circular room became a family meeting place. Adrian's notebooks were kept in a secure archive, but Alone's remained with her. On the first anniversary of her father's death, they gathered beneath the market. Alone placed a vase of white roses at the center of the table. "Not crushed ones. Fresh ones. My father thought the city would turn dark," she said. Cashin looked at the others. "It did, but he left lights." She looked at her mother, then at Cashin, Bastion, Lucien, and Dario. For men the city feared. For men who had arrived at a wedding believing they were searching for secrets. Instead, they found a child waiting beneath dying roses. They had not claimed her as property. They had claimed the responsibility to protect her, listen to her, and become better men because she was watching. Bastion lifted the old flower basket from beside his chair. He had repaired the broken handle himself. Alone smiled. "You kept it. You said someone had to carry broken things." He handed it to her. Not alone. Years later, stories would spread through Belladonna City about the little flower girl guarded by four Mafia bosses. Some said she inherited their empire. Some said she destroyed it. The truth was more powerful. She changed what it meant. And whenever powerful men entered the glass house to negotiate, they found a lone heart seated in the fifth chair, for bosses behind her and her father's words before her. A kingdom built on fear will eventually fall. A family built by choice can survive anything. The flower girl Celeste abandoned was gone. In her place stood a child who had discovered that being claimed did not mean being owned. It meant four dangerous men looked at the darkness coming for her and answered with one voice. She is ours to protect, and nobody would ever leave her waiting alone again. If Alone's courage and the way these four ruthless bosses became her unlikely family touched you, subscribe to the channel for more emotional Mafia stories filled with betrayal, mystery, loyalty, and unforgettable twists. Tell us in the comments, which moment did you love most? The rescue at the mansion, Lucien surrendering his kingdom, Alone confronting Celeste, or the four bosses choosing her over their empires? Like and share this story with someone who believes real family is not always defined by blood, but by the people who refuse to abandon you.